Right, let's move on now, of course, to the situation in the Middle East. Israel has agreed to daily military pauses in Northern Gaza for humanitarian purposes. What is the significance of this pause in your view?
Well, I think it's an important decision because it will allow more Palestinian civilians to escape the fighting, and it should mean less civilian casualties from this necessary operation to destroy and defeat Hamas. I think the test of it will be, will Hamas let these Palestinian civilians leave, because it has been using them as human shields, and will it allow their uninterrupted and unimpeded departure from the north of Gaza? We saw reports that 80,000 Gazans left the north of Gaza yesterday and moved into the south of Gaza because of this humanitarian corridor that Israel had set up. I think that's welcome news, because this military operation against Hamas has to continue and it has to be successful. But obviously, we all want civilian casualties to be minimised as much as possible.
Joe Biden, of course, was quite important in helping broker this pause. In your view, how long can that last realistically? Joe Biden is, of course, seeking re-election next year, and already the Arab American community is leading a revolt within the Democrat Party over the president's pro-Israel position. So realistically, how long can that US support for Israel go on for?
Well, look, obviously there is domestic politics at work in the United States like in any other country. But I would say this about Joe Biden. He has been full-throated and sincere in his support of Israel's right to defend itself ever since these horrific terrorist attacks of the 7th of October. And he is someone that has Israel close to his heart. He's visited a number of times. He's had a very long career as president, but as also vice president and senator. He knows these issues inside out. And he, like everyone, wants to see civilian casualties minimised. But he also knows that the best hope for peace in the Middle East, but also the best hope for the future of the Palestinian people, has to lie with the eradication of Hamas. And I think he will provide all the support that is necessary to Israel to allow that to happen.
You wrote in The Australian today that the call for a ceasefire is misplaced. You mentioned yourself that innocent lives are being killed on both sides here. So when and how does this end, if not for a ceasefire?
Well, this can end very simply if Hamas returns the 240 hostages it's holding and surrenders its military leadership. That's how conflicts tend to end, either with surrender or defeat. But the point I was making beyond that is that ultimately, if Hamas is left in power, if those who argue for a ceasefire are arguing for a preservation of the status quo, all that will lead to is future conflict, future suffering of the Palestinian people, and future frustrated attempts at peace. If you actually support peace in the Middle East, if you support a two-state solution, if you support an enduring settlement between Israel and the Palestinians, then you have to support the removal of Hamas, because they have been an obstacle to all of those objectives throughout.
You're also calling for Penny Wong to travel to the Middle East. What would that achieve having her there?
Well, I think Australia has important interests at stake here. I mean, not only do we have civilians we have to worry about in Israel and in Gaza, but also in the region in places like Lebanon, but we also have concerns about the war spreading and escalating. And as Penny Wong has made clear quite frequently, we also have concerns about how both parties conduct their war. Now, the obvious role for a foreign minister to play here is to get involved. And I made the point that not only has Penny Wong, unlike most other foreign ministers from similar countries, not visited Israel since these attacks, she hasn't been to the region in 18 months in office. So, you know, giving press conferences from Adelaide is all very well, but if we actually want to have an influence and have a say and influence the outcome of this war and lead to better outcomes for civilians on both sides, then she needs to roll up her sleeves and get involved. And that starts with travelling to the region. You
mentioned just before a two-state solution. Realistically, is it naive to think, given what's going on right now, that that will ever be a solution?
No, I don't think it is naive. And often, you know, as they say, it's darkest before the dawn. I think if you look at the history here, Hamas has been an obstacle to and a frustrator of every major peace effort now going back 20 to 30 years. The last major peace effort in 2014, which was led by John Kerry, was frustrated and derailed when Hamas kidnapped and murdered 3 Israeli teenagers and then launched a rocket barrage from Gaza. They've launched this assault this time because they were concerned about an Israel-Saudi normalisation agreement, which would have helped pave the way for a broader peace effort. So I think with Hamas's removal from power, and that's why people who support peace in the Middle East should be supporting this objective, with Hamas's removal from power in the Middle East, we could actually see a situation where there is a Palestinian leadership to negotiate with that recognises Israel's right to exist, that is prepared to tolerate coexistence and that supports two states. That's really what we've been lacking for going back to at least 15 years since Hamas took over the territory in Gaza.
Dave Sharma, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.